Hello, Internet. Welcome to the Nerdsmith Power Hour, where we hang out during your lunch break. That's it. That's all I got.
Okay.
I'll
Good
think
night,
of something better
everybody.
next time. Goodbye. I'm Angela. This is Logan, and we are two of the directors of Nerdsmith. We like hanging out on our Wednesday afternoons and shooting the shit and talking D&D, RPGs, gaming. What else? Did you
DMing,
write?
sci-fi, fantasy, fun, silliness, ridiculous OCs, movies, or anything else.
Yes, and boy, do I have OCs to share, because I have a
you have been
problem,
addicted to
and that
TikTok.
problem has become that problem is called TikTok.
Afternoon soup time. We should just call this afternoon soup.
No, because the soup is already a thing. We can't take that. Afternoon amateur soup.
They only have soup. Where are you at? I'm at soup. Sorry. Thank you, Angela, for the sub.
You're welcome. I had forgotten.
Thank you for giving us free money.
Option. Yay! And that's a reminder to everybody out there who might be watching that if you have Twitch Prime and you have not yet taken advantage of this, Twitch Prime gives you... Yes, if you have Amazon Twitch...
if you have Amazon
Prime
Twitch,
gives you
everybody has Amazon Twitch.
If you have Amazon Prime, you get access to one complimentary subscription to a Twitch channel of your choice. And if you decide you'd like to gift it to us, we would be incredibly grateful. It doesn't cost you anything other than your Amazon Prime account as you normally pay for it. So nothing new. So please continue to think about doing that, or continue to support whoever. If you decide you don't want to give it to us, at least give it to somebody. It is money on the table that you should at least share with somebody. So yeah.
Which I really don't understand, because how much does Prime cost a month?
It's like $70 to $90
a year.
A year.
A month, yeah.
No, it's a year.
So $90 a year. I'm just trying to work out the math, because we get $3, $2.50 of it for each month. And,
the money, I think, whatever it is, it costs so little to do. I'm just doing.
Well, I mean, if Amazon is paying us through Twitch $2.50 out of every $7 they make, then I mean, it just seems like
Amazon.
But I guess they're not
30.
Well, I was gonna say not everyone is. Probably 10% of Amazon Prime owners actually use it on Twitch, so it's probably not.
I was gonna say that Venn diagram is probably kind of intense. So how are you doing today, Logan? We are a pirate. I have not broken out into that TikTok yet.
Oh, that'll be fun.
But I did just join a Firefly roleplay server to do TikToks, and I pulled whiskey into it. They approved it, and I have a dog on the ship. I'm very excited. I'm not playing whiskey. He's just in some of my videos, and I just called him Whiskey. I'm like, I don't have to change this. It's a Firefly game. Whiskey's a completely legitimate name for a dog.
Completely acceptable name.
So you can follow
Jim
me on...
Bean.
Yeah, right?
Jim Toe Bean.
Jim Toe. Oh my
god. I win. So hello, audience. Let us know what you want to talk about today. Otherwise, we're going to probably talk a lot about TikTok, because that's been my life, even though I'm not doing it yet. Because my wife has been like, every free minute I have to go record a TikTok. What are you talking about?
It's fun, right?
I don't know. I haven't done it.
She's having fun, right?
Yes, she's having fun. And she runs out in costumes every 2 seconds. She goes, you got to watch this. I'm like, what am I watching? Like, I watch 20 TikToks a day now.
I know. I do that to Andy. I feel bad. I've stopped. I'm like, you know what? He's not the audience for this. It's okay.
I enjoy it. It's just, it's really at awkward times. Like, I'll be goofing off, and I'll be playing Rust, to be in the middle of a PvP battle, and she'll be like, here, you got to watch this. Okay. I love you, sweetie.
So, hi Tessa. I see
you. Hi Tessa.
So yeah, I guess the basic gist is I'll try to keep it as short as possible, even though I've got you here captive for an hour.
You shouldn't feel bad. Good job.
So I started getting into TikTok. Why did I start? I started doing it because I wanted to start promoting Shenanigans Season 2. So I was doing some cosplay.
How's that going?
It's going okay. I don't want to spoil too much until we're ready to talk more about the character. fuck TikTok for a second. We had a private, not published stream.
Tess is like, how dare.
We won't talk about it too much, obviously. It's
Bull
meant
crap.
to be sort of behind the... Well, we won't talk specifics.
No, we won't talk specifics.
Behind the scenes.
Yes.
But last night, we had our first fully casted Session 0 for the second season of Shenanigans.
So we learned about the backstory. Well, we did. You didn't. But we learned about the backstory of the characters and kind of how they met.
Did some connecting. Yeah.
We have, I think, 3 sessions before... Yeah, so we have 3 sessions before we for Shenanigans.
There was makeup tests.
We go what?
What Jesse just mentioned in chat. Kyle sent me a picture. There were makeup tests during Session 0. Some of us were testing our makeups because we're going all out with some costuming and little props and stuff. So we'll be having a good time. I'm excited. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was trying to react to chat.
That's all right. No, I'm just trying to remember what the hell I was talking about.
We were talking about Session 0.
Oh, so 3 sessions. So Shenanigans next Tuesday will be probably just a one-shot. We'll just have goof off and have some fun and get to know each other.
Or something else, you think?
I don't know yet. Probably something else because it's easier than D&D. Although maybe D&D because we need to learn with each other. Anyway, we want to get to know Ren a little better because they are new.
Level 3 characters just to be used to that level for a little while.
And then just accidentally play your actual characters. Or play the polar opposite of your characters.
There you go. You could try out some of the combat you want to play around with. If you come up with some skeleton of an idea, we could run a combat.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So we'll probably play around next week, and then we'll have. But I mean, I'm also we have 2 tech rehearsals with the full kit and caboodle with the actual characters, at least partially. I don't want to get too much into it because the next 3 sessions will be subscriber only. So good job on the subscriptions, those of you out there. Because the next 3 sessions will be for Shenanigans. Will be subscriber only.
I get to watch it?
Yeah.
Because I subscribed just now. Yes. Hooray!
So that's good. And we did some makeup tests, and everyone except Ren was dressed up, and Ren felt left out.
Well, Ren, they were working really hard on their show and trying to balance looking like a host rather than looking like a silly cosplay.
And their show ends a half hour before our call, so I'm not exactly sure how they're going to manage getting their costume on before our show, unless they do their show in costume, which would be amazing.
Well, no, I would think. I mean, Ren was already putting on partial costume on tech during prep, so I think they could probably get ready in a half hour.
Yeah, they are a LARPer, so they're used to getting ready in a hurry.
I am not used to makeup, and it took way too long putting my makeup on. I mean, okay, let me preface. This is going to roll back to TikTok. I decided to be efficient with my time. And when... efficient. So Andy is on the Banana Brothers on Curious Crafts stream. Mm-hmm. Andy is on Curious Crafts stream an hour before... Right? 7 o'clock. 2 hours, technically 3 hours before Goonies starts, but 2.5 before I have to be on a call. So I have 2.5 hours of just dicking around, not knowing what to do with myself. And so I'm like, okay, what do? I guess I could practice my cat eye makeup that I need to do, the little wingtip thing. And so I did that. And then I went, well, I was already trying to come up with this character. Maybe I should just do some TikToks while I'm waiting. So I added some extra makeup that I ended up wiping off before we went live with the Goonies session, and I recorded 12 videos.
Oh, jeez.
Before, when you're only doing 15 seconds a pop, I mean, it does not take, it took me 2 hours, but it did not take, like in the grand scheme of how much content I produced, it was not that much time.
Yeah, I guess if you're just doing like the audio recordings of the audio that already exists inside of the system designed to how to do it. You're not writing something, you're not trying to decide how you're going to pass a message across.
The only thing that might take a little of that sort of research time is looking through videos or audios to try to what would be fun. What I really am intrigued by, because I've taken like media classes and a couple of other sort of communications classes in college, I really dig the fact that TikTok seems to be taking the idea of referential and memeing things and sort of taking it to its like extreme, where it's
extreme right now.
Right. It's so quick. It's so self-referential and cyclical. It's an interesting environment to sort of watch trends happen or kind of catch on to the way that communication happens with it. And RP is a totally different element of TikTok. It's not just goof. Like it is a lot of goof. Like I did 2 John Mulaney jokes when I was doing my recording.
Nice.
And a Ron Swanson, which I was very proud of. But the idea of contextualizing your character through reference is such a this generation thing, or like the last few generations of like internet culture. Just this idea of referencing through references.
Okay.
And then like there's almost like kind of a spiral of more and more reference, and to have it in such a short chunk of time, you either experience it as, oh, I know what that is, that's really funny, or you have no idea what it's referencing, and you have to find the humor or the performance quality in that tiny space. And it's interesting. It's really good practice for emoting facially, because you're like, and I mean, lip syncing itself is a practice. You have to practice at
Right.
it. But to only have that much time to do it, you have to go big, you have to go bold, you have to do neat things. People are fucking around. I'm doing it too, like messing around with lighting effects and like practical and digital lighting effects. Like I need a shadow, so I go play with making a shadow. It's very fun. It's a very like microcosm of like learning cinematography and then learning editing. There's some really cool things that I think people that use these social media tools are going to get this like weird crash course in a couple of production methods. I am a big fan of egalitarian design tools. Like, here, take it and run with it. See what you do with it.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I've been both playing in the space as like a goofy, I want to make an original character and I want to just like explore them through music and quotes and stuff.
Yeah.
And also like from a sociological standpoint of what social media is and how it works and how people interact on it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of. Right now, I'm a big fan of it.
Very cool. I like it.
I gotta pace myself though. I think I'm gonna end up being. I think Tuesday's just gonna end up being my most productive day because I'm already gonna be in costume.
Yeah.
So it's like whatever. I might as well do it. Hi, Zach.
Zach.
Welcome.
Hello, my friend.
And Jesse, that is totally fine if you don't post. You can just lurk. There's a ton of fun stuff on there to just lurk. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I have 3 characters right now that I'm playing around with. They have nothing in common, so I can't really like try to be efficient and record multiple things at once. I'm half in my Firefly cosplay right now. But yeah. So I've got a Firefly character, I've got a not supernatural the show, but like a supernatural character in a series called the Diadem Chronicles. She's a djinn that escaped her servitude, and so she's sort of dealing with the fallout of being a genie that had to grant wishes for maybe not great people, and so dealing with sort of the fallout of the pain and the destruction she might have caused as a near ageless being of unlimited magical power. But she's sort of a lot less unlimited now. And then I'm also playing a character in a post-apocalyptic fantasy world where like all the Oz and Disney and fairy tale characters are all in like a mental asylum, and then there's a post-apocalyptic dystopian city up top, and so they're all in the base underneath. And people are giving their characters like weird alphanumeric sort of leet translations of their fairy tale character names. So like Alice is like 4L1C3 or something. And then they get like, they put tattoos on them and they're wearing like glow sticks and stuff to get this sort of like, I'm wearing an electric collar that makes me look like I'm being kept somewhere. The woman who plays Alice, I think, started it. It's called A Sunderland. And so there's like a whole like there's storylines and people doing cool reaction videos, and I made a Lost Boy And I'm really pleased with. He's kind of a mix between Lost Boy and Tin Man,
right.
and I'm very pleased with playing
Cool.
around with like special effects and stuff. Yes, and Tessa's playing Dormouse, MAU5, as in
which is
Dead Mouse.
hilarious.
I very much enjoyed that. But yeah, my Jin's really cool. I haven't, and there's text role play in Discord to like play around with the videos. It's this really interesting transmedia experience that you're RPing in different mediums.
Okay.
You're playing between text and cosplay and these RP videos, and some people are actually doing like not lip sync videos too. So there's like little short conversations that people can have, or like reaction things that people can have. So yeah, I'm really digging it.
Cool. I love it.
So yeah, that's what I've been that's been my role play game experience for the last week or so, has been playing around in these RP spaces. And I think I have to be done. I can't add anymore. That's it. I think 3's my limit. I'm not even sure how much text RP I'm going to be doing. I've just really been digging the character building and the like characterization work. So we'll see how much I do beyond just the TikTok video.
Very cool.
So yeah, we had session 0 for so anyway, back to what we were talking about. We did session 0 for Shenanigans. We did a lot of really cool backstory building. I don't know if we talked about what we had done to make those so what we did with backstory building. We stole them. But we, as anyone who watches this show regularly probably knows, Logan and I, thanks to Rev from the Crit Show and from the recent season of Obscurum, he gave us a kind of crash course into character building for the Monster of the Week system, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse RPG system. And we fell in love with some of the character building aspects for that system. And we specifically the connection building feature.
Yeah.
So you're given based on
Monster of the Week is called History.
Yeah, so based on the class or the archetype that you choose, you get a list that is kind of catered to that archetype, and you go around the table and make connections with people and say, okay, you're a distant relative of mine, or I saved your life once and now you think I'm a hero, or now, I constantly have to save your butt because you hang around me now. So there's different things, and like I said, they're catered to the archetype. So what we did was we looked at all the characters that we were planning on playing. We checked out their backstories, because backstories, very often I find they get underutilized, because it's mostly like, this is way back in the day, and it's mostly used for, I get some skill and tool proficiencies or my special feature, and it doesn't really play as much into the party dynamic. It just basically becomes like a one sentence, like, this is the kind of personality I am. And I think we've done a nice job of utilizing the background a bit more robustly in the beginning. So we wrote and rewrote and blatantly copied backgrounds.
Blatantly stole, yeah.
Not all of them. Some of them we tinkered with to fit the all the backgrounds that our characters had. So we were making, I think, a list of 10 for each background that we have represented in the party.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then
we created some new ones on the fly and did a little bit of connection there. It was actually a lot of fun. It did not go as I expected. I really would like to go back and look at try to remember how we did it for Monster of the Week and what Monster of the Week does a little differently, because it didn't feel like it flowed as naturally, but maybe because it's a system that's not designed for it, and we're just trying to.
I think it could also be a genre thing, and we had already conceptualized our characters a bit more. I think one of the things that's nice about Monster of the Week is you're making those connections as you are constructing your character. So if we had done a session 0 where we literally hadn't thought at all and then got together and built it, that helps a lot, because instead of trying to fit a backstory,
you create the backstory
into
with
the character.
them. That's a good point.
Yeah, you have it in mind.
That's a good point.
So I think that's probably one shortfall of the process that we did. But I mean, after a little while, little greasing the wheels here and there, we got it working, I think. I made a miscalculation on one of the backgrounds that I suggested, and then I got together with the player and we came up with something we were both happier with and thought had a little bit more story potential, which was good. That was nice that we were able to kind of backstep and feel the freedom to be able to say, okay, we want to adjust some stuff, because on the spot decision making, especially when we have character concepts in our heads, can be a challenge. So I was actually very pleased that we were able to kind of adjust it, and we didn't actually have to get rid of the original premise. We just kind of we played around with it, we tinkered with it, and added more detail to it. So yeah, I really enjoyed the concept of the connections thing. We have several backstory connections that are going out to another player, like from our list, and then we have a couple that are coming in from other players. So we have a nice mix of sort of agency in the backstory the backstory options.
The backstory story.
I did realize.
Love that boy band.
I did realize after we adjusted with that other player, I no longer have any outgoings. All of mine are incoming, but I can make that work. I don't mind.
Well, in your list, some of the outgoings were incoming, so I mean, it's whatever.
Yeah. But the character I'm playing, I think, is very interested in other people, so I'm not worried about it making me feel like I don't know what to do with my character. Like, it's not gonna be a problem. But these are mostly just a means of exploring how we met in a more structured way, and then Logan's intending to have us maybe talk a bit more about specific adventures, and because we're level 3 at the start. So we'll have been adventuring for a little while, and presumably adventuring with each other in some configuration, before the first episode actually happens.
Correct.
So yeah, building characters with history. I like building parties that have a little bit of history. It gives you a starting spot, a place of some inspiration. I think it's personally more interesting to have a little variety in the way you start a campaign. I like in media res. I like establishing backstory before role playing a little bit. There's benefits to both, having sort of a blank slate, meeting each other for the first time, getting a feel for each other, not knowing whether you can trust each other. But in the way that this game goes, like, let's skip the icebreaker. Let's just already all be to some degree committed to each other as a party. So yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, we're getting our subclasses at level 3, Jesse. So yeah, we're starting at level 3.
I don't usually start level 1 unless there's a good reason, because levels 1 and 2 can be a little boring sometimes for people. And I also like the idea that they've had some experience. But if it's a campaign from how did you start adventuring, like you start with the learning why they're adventuring.
Call to adventure.
Yeah, the call to adventure. Like I actually have plans for one campaign, but it'll probably be turned into a mini series. So it'll be just a short, like 4 to 6 week thing that we'll do as part of the one new show we're talking about later this year. But we're actually starting everyone at 0 level. So they're actually before they ever even learned how to train. And then after the first session or 2 at 0 level, they will then go out and get their training and come back together.
No, and then yeah, that particular series I'm excited about. We'll continue developing it. We got a couple of things sort of on the back burner.
I don't have a problem making sure my players feel like they should consider if they should fight something or not. So 3rd level or 1st, it doesn't really matter. But I think a lot of it comes down to I used to run a lot of rules as written, and so the combats are very tough at 1st level, very easy to drop people, and so it became kind of an issue with that. We talked a lot about house rules. We're going to be talking about determination again. One house rule that came up as part of all this, I really enjoyed, because it's going to make combat a little bit more meaningful. One of the big issues, and there you can go and find 1,000 articles and videos about this, but there's a spell in the game that is what a lot of DMs consider broken. I'm not going to call it broken, but I would say that it is abused, and it basically means that no one will ever die ever. It is Healing Word. And as a bonus action, you can do a small amount of healing to anybody up to 30 feet away. And so when somebody drops to 0 hit points and they go unconscious, they have to go 3 rounds before they're going to die. So
all you have to do is find space for a bonus action.
One bonus action to get them up.
Barring any extenuating damage that's happening to them.
Yeah, if something else, if a rock falls in them, or they get caught in a couple more, burns, I suppose that they could die quicker.
You have never been shy about doing that, like bringing up
mostly to try to combat that idea. But yes, smart bad guys will go for the kill over the drop. But
unless that's their goal, is like
unless they just want them out of the way.
That's not my. That's not my problem. If you live or die, I don't need to expend the energy to make you die. Yeah. If you live, whatever. I just need you to not stop hitting me.
Yeah, stop hitting me. Yeah, basically. So the thing that this house rule that came up was the idea that every time you drop to 0 and get brought back to 1, you take a level of exhaustion, which I thought was a very interesting rule. And of course, this would work for the bad guys too, but it's going to go less for the bad guys because they're not going to get up as often. Only very few of my combats are you going to be going up against somebody who's healing themselves or something. But there's things like trolls that regenerate and stuff, and then that would go away at the normal exhaustion go away rate, which I think is, or we might even change it up so that it goes away a little bit faster. Because I think with exhaustion, a full long rest doesn't get rid of all of it. And I think I would have for combat exhaustion, I think a long rest would just get rid of all of it. Because you're just like, okay, I've rested. But I like the idea that it, we might even create, this is similar to a system I've talked about before that where maybe not on this show, but where, combat damage, when you get down into critical hits, like they add on these wounds and things, and you have to wait for a while to get these wounds. It makes combat a little bit more realistic, but I don't want to go so realistic that we lose the fantasy edge to it. I don't want to feel like we're in, a medieval thing. We're literally flying around in space on like Treasure Planet. So realism is not going to be a big thing in this next campaign.
That's actually, Jesse brings up a decent point. I'd almost say it would be interesting to give the players a choice when they come back. It's like, do you want a level of exhaustion, or do you want to risk rolling on this injury table when you get brought back?
The only problem with that is combat already takes long enough as is, and I don't want to adding in a choice plus a random die roll. You just to every time somebody drops, it just becomes a lot. To have something that's like, here's the thing, but what I would probably do, what I could do is we could create a system where it's here's the exhaustion, or here's combat exhaustion, or whatever we call it. And every time you drop to 0 and get brought back, you have to choose from one of these 2 things at each tier. So for tier 1 is you can take a level of exhaustion, or you can have a scar, that doesn't necessarily affect you, but it is visible, and describe how you were hit or something like that. Or based on
one intriguing way of setting pacing during a game could be, depending on the pacing, when you describe recovery from a combat, the idea of a rest to kind of recuperate and recover, creating that as almost a sort of like bonfire or like fireside moment where it's like, okay, we're gonna restock, we're gonna talk about what you guys do to kind of recover. That's like in the example that I was giving, that having them roll for like, okay, you assess how you're all doing right now. In the heat of the moment, you didn't notice that you had, taken a pretty bad cut to your leg, and that's going to impede you. Like that sort of, it's almost like a cool down from the combat, but then also gives players an opportunity to RP a little. It would depend on the actual situation, like whether or not this was a like important plot sort of combat, or if it was just sort of an offhanded while you guys were traveling sort of thing.
So we do a lot of those
slower pace.
We do a lot of those. Yeah, we slow down the game a little bit, but we do a lot of those types of moments where you guys are sitting down and relaxing and trying to decide reflecting on what happened and then trying to decide what to do with that information. But adding in the idea that you're kind of dressing your wounds at that time is kind of good. I like that. That would be a good thing to
Adds
talk
a
about
little
at that
bit more
time.
to the realism
Yeah.
of it, the wanting to be like, no, you don't just get up and walk around. Like, y'all have to get, like, I gotta take a nap.
Yeah.
And I
But
gotta
this
like wrap
also
this wound.
this also goes back to the idea of something that I think is sorely missing from D&D is the idea of where is that line between, you're exhausting me, you're making me tired, you're taking away my hit points, and you're
carving
actually
pieces off of
physically
me.
hurting me. You have actually
Yes.
cut my arm off, or you cut into me, or whatever.
It's often the case that HP is just all out wholesale treated as how many points
Yeah.
before you die, and then
Yeah.
that's okay. All right, that's one way to interpret it.
If you want a really bloody, campaign, yeah, that's great. That means that everyone's constantly just bleeding all over the place.
Or you're playing a game of battle robots and you're losing limbs.
Exactly.
Everybody's Warforged.
Everybody's Warforged.
And hit points are literally points until you're completely a mess. You just have a table. You have a diagram of your body parts. It's the things that fall off and get knocked off.
So Zach, in a home game or for long combats, I might consider something like that. But especially for this type of game, I don't want to take anyone out of the game especially when my combats only last 2 to 3 rounds as is. I would hate to have somebody drop in the first round and then roll for unconsciousness. I'm going to come back, or consciousness, come back in 4 rounds. Oh, the combat's over by the time I wake up. I already struggle enough with making sure that everyone gets meaningful moments in combat. I don't want to take away those opportunities.
That makes sense.
But this also goes along with the idea, something that I've adapted that a lot of DMs still don't do. I don't roll random. I say that I roll random encounters now. This is a little hint, but I don't really do random encounters. If I may have a chart of encounters that can all be meaningful and they matter for some reason, but that might be random encounter, but something's going to happen in that moment, and there's going to be a reason behind it. And as a little tip to your DMs out there, sometimes I'll say, "Oh, you've been traveling for 3 hours, random encounter time. I know exactly what's going to happen, but I'm going to roll the dice and make people think I've got a chart." So the idea is that you get this idea that it becomes a random circumstance, but something very specific is about to happen. I especially like doing that around Fae, like if they happen to be running across a particular magic vendor that randomly shows up now and then, but it's not really that random, with his little magical cart and fairy jars in the back. What it comes down to is the combat. I want to make sure everything is meaningful, and so I don't put combats into my game that don't matter anymore. And they don't always matter for the same reason. Sometimes I'm just trying to give the idea that this is an imposing, dangerous place. That's a meaningful combat. But just random encounters while you're walking through the forest. Oh, there's some spiders. Ooh, kill them. No, I don't do that anymore. So this kind of leans into that. So we have less encounters because they're all meaningful, but now let's make them have lasting meaning as well, and show that this is a somewhat nitty-gritty combat. That's kind of part of it. I want to have a little bit more grit to my combat, but you can't have that if you're just magically okay at the end of every combat.
But you also can't, from a sustainability
standpoint, death cannot be the only consequence, is what I'm saying to combat.
Sure, but I'm saying on the flip side, you also have to make sure balancing that, and I'm not arguing against anything you said, it's just a keep in mind that you need to make sure that it's also the damage that they're taking is not going to impede their ability to ever be involved in a combat effectively again,
right?
Because it's that severe of a
I wouldn't do that.
In the end, you want the players to be able to play,
but that also comes down to session 0 and in the moment.
What kind of game do you want?
I would sit down and once I create the system, we'll sit down with the players and I'll go, and maybe that's why we have the choice. It's like, well, you can take another level of exhaustion, or at level 5, the 5th time you've been dropped to 0, you lose a limb. And if you don't have a ring of regeneration or a spell of regeneration, you might lose your hand or you might lose a leg, and we have to resolve that. Am I going to make that a permanent debilitation? No, you're going to find a way to work with that.
Yeah.
But it's there's going to be something that kind of may affect you permanently long term, but that's after dropping 5 times in a combat. Or maybe, like I said, if we just leave it as exhaustion, it does at least give an opportunity. And it kind of is, for me, it's like the resurrection thing. The way we do house rule resurrections, every so often you get resurrected, it becomes harder and harder and harder. Eventually, you can't be resurrected. This is similar. It's like, okay, you drop to 0, you're back up. You drop to 0, you're back up. And then after a while, you're just not going to get back up. The healing's just not going to work on you anymore. And you're just going to have that actual rest. You'll stabilize, I think, but you're not going to become conscious is what it comes down to. Because I don't want to get to the point of
I like that a lot.
So I don't want to, that's why I'm saying it shouldn't be exhaustion, it should be combat exhaustion, because I don't want to get to the point of, well, you dropped 6 times, you're just dead. It's like, okay, that's a little bit much. But maybe if you drop 6 times and you've got 6 levels of combat exhaustion and you can't become conscious,
you're unconscious.
If you take any more damage, you're dead. You are at 2 death saves, period, and you're floating there in this horrible situation because you've literally been dropped to 0 6 times. That is a huge amount of unconsciousness.
That's that is intense physical trauma to your body that would not make sense for you to come back from anything other than a life magic trying to return you to life.
Exactly. And then you might even say that at that point, it's if they do die with 6 levels of exhaustion, your little 1 minute revivification may not work. It's too far gone. You've got to do something more powerful. So I just think there's different levels you could do to make it a little bit more severe, but not completely remove them or debilitate. Because in a combat like that, if you've dropped 6 times, that means the bad guys have gone 6 times. That's a long combat. Or they've gone, 2 guys have gone 3 and they're targeting you for some reason, maybe because you're taunting them.
So here's something that just occurred to me that is a value for my fireside idea, post-combat fireside recovery. In the event that somebody does get just completely wrecked, there is story potential in the aftermath or in the recovery process that might help, for lack of a better phrase, soften the blow of being less effective in combat. If you get taken out in a combat, but then you give that player an opportunity to interact with the other players and work through what they've suffered or work through the shame of them getting completely knocked unconscious or whatever it is, giving them a slight spotlight space after getting completely wrecked in combat might allow them, and this might just be something that I think I personally would enjoy or appreciate, just getting that opportunity to kind of recenter as, okay, I felt like shit because I wasn't and the people were getting criticals and all this shit, they were amazing, and I was just sort of okay, I died. That kind of thing might be a little lessened by allowing there to be a point where it's okay, well, we're gonna you want to hang out and talk to somebody for a bit to kind of work and relax and kind of decompress from that, both as a player and a character. And again, that's down to, do you think your players would appreciate that slower pacing? Does your story have that slower pacing capability? Some games don't. Some games are too silly and it's not really a problem. But in slightly more serious games or a game where you might be noticing that you hit a combat and then you never talk about what happens after, I like that lived in-ness to it.
So we've done both types of games, and we've done campaigns where we would do 8 to 10 hours worth of open RP in the middle of the night with 10 players, and that was ridiculous. And those are slower. That's much slower paced. And then we have games where, with Shenanigans, we got to the point where it felt like we weren't doing any of that at all.
There wasn't really a day in the life aspect to it by the end. It was just sort of
not by the end. The end, I tried to pull it back from that, but it was the last couple of arcs before that.
Yeah, by the arcs.
I started to feel that point, which was great for the stream initially, learning how to be goofy and silly and deal with that, which was great. But then I was missing it towards the end. I want to kind of pull that back as we're wrapping up. So somewhere in between those two is really where I want to be. And so I think those moments will happen and should happen in Shenanigans 2.0 and other games. But just you got to understand that it's we can't spend an hour working through this. You got 20 minutes, let's go, or 10 minutes, let's go.
Well, and that's why I always try to keep in mind or reinforce the fact that you can be in different games. Different games can have different pacing. For example, like I at some point want to run maybe a mini series, maybe it's an every so often thing where you build it as one shots, but I want to run Cheers in a fantasy Cheers. And I think that would be really fun where it's like, I mean, a lot of what I've noticed a lot is that style of slower role play that comes from my experiences with text role play where you can have scenes happening for days. One scene, it takes days to write through, and you're just existing and ruminating on things and interacting in like a real life sort of pace. The stakes are lower, that sort of thing. So yeah, the idea of running a game that is intrinsically more day in the life or lower stake because you want to role play that out, you want to tell a different kind of story. And so I really try to reinforce for myself, I try to remind myself that one campaign need not be everything at once, that you can find other games and you can have other games going that satisfy those different storytelling urges that you have. With the shows, we have a not a box, but we do have a certain expectation because we have people. It's not just for us. We have people watching the show, so there are other considerations. Even though I'm sure there are people out there that have watched our games that would like just fucking watch us have like the party goes to a B&B for the weekend. Like someone would
we
be super
literally
into
did
that.
A beach episode.
We did, and it was great, and those are fun. So yeah, just that idea of Jesse, you make a good point. What you're describing there, that sort of acknowledging the effects. I think this combat system might allow us to get in that headspace a bit better.
So
of leaning into that idea of being able to remember that's a thing you experienced. So that can be an aspect, but that definitely relies on it being a day-to-day pacing.
Yeah.
Where it's not okay, we skipped 3 weeks, you're fine now.
Yeah, I think and I think that's a huge factor. What Jesse's saying there, that's something that I have learned how to do, and I don't know how or why it comes up, but I have characters that from their experiences in the game change how they react and do things. Everyone does to a degree, but I remember the little things. I remember small things. Like I've had characters that would like no longer fight against certain monsters, like because they dropped several times against them or almost died. And it's like, oh, you want to go fight a Odiug? No, thank you. And you guys go have fun. And he just wouldn't go and fight with them anymore. And basically left them to fight it on their own because he's like, I won't. I'll stand way back here where I know it can't get me, and I will heal you through the doors or whatever. But for the most part, I just won't. And having kind of that trauma and that dealing with those things. But I like the idea of it being on even the macro, like, oh, we just had combat and now everybody's rushing to go move this 20-ton rock so we can get in this next room. It's like, it always feels like everyone's like, yeah, let's go do it. And it never feels like, oh, okay, give me a second. That idea of, oh, I really hurt.
Well, I had a pitch for you just now. Teacher, I want more homework. So I had this thought of, I mean, specifically I'm thinking in a D&D lens.
Yeah.
But you have a combat encounter. It goes really bad. Y'all, you fucked up. And at the end or during the recovery from that combat encounter, you ask every player to choose one of their top skills to have disadvantage on for the next session, and you have to talk about why. You got fucked up in the last fight. What happened? Why are you struggling with something you're normally good at? What, did you take an injury? Are you freaking out a little bit? Are you just really frazzled from the thing that happened? And not in an attempt to punish, but in an attempt to try to encourage active consideration of what the... I mean,
you don't need the DM to prompt you. Is part of what I'm saying is that you can just take those things into consideration on your own.
Right, encouraging players. That comes into a player, and we talked, I think, a little bit about this during our session 0, and I think it's worth saying. We talked a little bit about min-maxing and that sort of thing, but the flip side of that, the less optimal choice, because our games are a little more RP heavy, we try to embrace choices that are suboptimal.
Right.
Not that we tell people go do the suboptimal thing,
Yeah.
but if somebody chooses to express something about a character that makes them less effective because they want to explore that thing, embrace it, encourage it. Don't get mad at your fellow player because, oh, but you have sneak attack.
Yeah.
Like, that's up to them. Like, their enjoyment of the game, their sense of satisfaction should be in their control.
Yeah.
And so whatever their definition of successful or enjoyable is, as long as it's something that isn't fucking up anybody else's fun, I realize I sort of walked myself into being an edgelord is fine because that's what I want to play, but that's not what I meant to say. But the example of somebody saying, or there's a little bit of talk in chat, somebody suddenly having a phobia, or like you said, sort of like traumatic memory of a thing that happened to them, suddenly affecting them in a way that actively impedes something that they're trying to do in game. That the players doing that for a reason. They're not saying like, oh fuck, I wish this wasn't a thing. Like, if they didn't want to explore it, they should feel empowered to just move on, or tell the DM, this isn't really something I'd like to explore. It makes me uncomfortable, or it's gonna really suck the fun out for me. I'm not really that interested. As long as that communication's open between the DM and the players to be like, listen, we want to explore challenging. I'm not saying that in a hypothetical. We like exploring challenging subjects. Me, Logan, the other players, and Shenanigans. We like having the opportunity for emotional exploration and growth, and maybe a little, if not external, internal conflict. We do sort of thrive on hurting our children, our graph paper children, but that's a choice that each group has to make for themselves about whether or not that is a thing, or if in the end it is just a game, or in the end, how about this? That's a very reductive statement that gets a lot of people incensed. What I mean is, in the end, this is a narrative story being told by a group of people in which the goal of it is enjoyment, however you define it.
Yeah.
So if something starts impeding that enjoyment, it should be in my opinion, should be the policy to talk it out and either work to resolve it or work to remove it enough that that person can then move forward and continue enjoying the game.
Yeah.
So just talk to each other, and don't be afraid to retcon some shit, or don't be afraid to adjust or sort of do a bit of gymnastics thought-wise to get something to work
I think
again.
Going back to the original point as well, the idea that I was trying to get across was not just emotional trauma, although that's the easiest one to kind of look at when you're dealing with life or death situations, but just remember that each of these experiences affects your character, and they're going to change how you're, think about the most traumatic thing you've ever done in your life, the top 10 most difficult or stressful or strenuous things you've ever done. You've ever run a marathon or anything like that. Each one of those sticks with you. You remember something about them, and it's like, okay, I got that. Take something from it and apply it to your character, at least in the short term, if not the long term. If you've been walking for several miles, even if you're a fit person, but if you've been walking for several miles, your legs are going to start hurting. It's just going to happen,
Zach is bringing up some interesting things in chat. The idea of letting people work it out in character. Sometimes those struggles with play style conflict can be something you can actually just talk about in character. Like, hey, why are you doing this? I'd really like you to stop doing this. That is an option. I find, at least in the last few times that I've experienced that sort of stress, it bleeds heavy into the player also not liking it. And so what I'd rather happen for myself is feel like that I'm like, if I'm the player, for example, I would like to feel empowered and trusted enough and trusting enough to be able to go to the player and say, hey, my character was kind of irritated by this thing that your character did, but it's starting to bleed a little bit, and it actually bothered me a little bit as a person. And so I want to know if we could talk out how to resolve that the next time we play, because it's just a thing that's kind of grating, and I don't want it to get in the way of us role playing together, or I don't want it to get in the way of, I don't want it to exacerbate or to get worse,
right?
Because I haven't talked to you about it. And so if you're able to work with the person on like a game plan, like, hey, I don't want to script our role play, but much in the way that Logan likes to say, you get 3 episodes to figure something out, or you get 3 weeks to figure out some bullshit that you're pulling. It would be nice to be able to say, okay, is there a way that we could maybe make this a narrative choice? Like, can I help your character work through this thing that seems to be bothering me? Is there a way that we can figure out a way to craft it into a narrative for our characters?
Yeah.
A little meta discussion can go a long way when it comes to resolving tension from someone's choices if you're really frustrated. But that does take trust and familiarity, and so building that is very important.
Yeah, is it on the player level? That's something that each player has to ask themselves.
Yeah.
If you start to realize that you're annoyed about it away from the table, it's time to talk.
Yes, if you're starting to kind of vent, like, oh, again, if you're finding yourself eye rolling repeatedly or mad when you leave the table, that could be a time to step up and try. And this is one of those things, and I'm finding this a lot when people try to give advice for how to deal with conflict. It is often an ideal. The ideal would be you can talk to this person in this way, and the other half of the ideal is they are receptive to that critique or that comment. So one would hope that everybody at the table tries really hard to be conscious and receptive to somebody coming to them with kindness and patience. Like, I'm frustrated, I need to talk this out with you, I want to work on it, let's make it into a storyline, but something that we both know where it's going, so I stop being frustrated by this thing, that kind of thing.
Right. Also, you should be very clear when you're talking to someone about that you're upset by something. If you leave it vague, they might take it as just
a character thing. Be clear about that.
They might just take it as a like advice or something, and they may dismiss it and not change because you left it vague.
Wouldn't it be cool if you did this? It's like, no, this was bothering me. Can we please try to work on it?
One of the things that I had everyone do last night was everybody had to give permission to everyone else to be okay with the idea that they might come to them with something like an issue of some sort. And that created a social contract between every 2 people that allows them to go and talk. Because sometimes it's a matter of not knowing if the person's going to be okay with it. And if everyone agreed and everyone said, yes, we're okay with that, now there's that social contract you've created with every other player, and now you have that. So the social contract is that they can go to each other and everyone will be open and receptive and you know how they're going to react because they've agreed that they're going to react openly and they're going to take that critique or criticism or concern and they're going to be open-minded about it, and because we agreed to it. I like that.
Yeah, no, I really appreciated that request from you that we all talk about it.
Yes, social contracts are important for every event in life.
Yeah, we've been working on social contracts a lot lately. That's like business news. We haven't really decided when we're going to release it, but we have decided to construct a more formal code of conduct for Nerdsmith. It's pretty much done, but
I think it's pretty much. We'll probably release it in the next couple of weeks.
So the idea of behavior or safety tools that we want to use in our public spaces, in our chats, things like that, and treating that as a social contract between us, the network, and our users, and the creators, and any connector that goes, and our moderation team, all those, and how they all intersect, stuff like that. So yeah, it's important to set rules, even if they're vague rules or just like simple rules. It helps everybody be on the same page.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Cash Corner?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so that is the end of our show. We'd like to thank our sponsors, World Anvil. You can go to worldanvil.com and take a look at their amazing world building suite of tools. There are so many tools. It's just amazing. You can't get over it. It's just incredible. So go over there to worldanvil.com and light up the forge. I almost forgot that was. And then we'd like to thank Die Hard Dice for being our sponsor as well. Go to dieharddice.com and you can use a coupon code DRPG, which will be changing at some point, I assume.
Yes.
So that's no longer the name of the
like
show.
Power Hour or something.
And DRPG to get 15% off.
Sorry. See, we each got
Can't
one.
use that hoverboard on water. You need more power. So go to dieharddice.com. Use the coupon code DRPG. 4 little letters gets you 15% off your first or next order. And if you want to roll with the best, you roll with Die Hard Dice. And lastly, I'd like to thank the Nerdsmith Network for having us to be a part of it. I guess we don't need to thank Nerdsmith anymore, considering this is the Nerdsmith Power Hour. We are the Nerdsmith.
Thank ourselves feels a little self-indulgent.
So I guess we don't need that one.
How about
anymore,
this? Let's adjust it. Let's adjust it. We want to thank. How about we want to thank the Nerdsmith community and the Nerdsmith viewers, people who are creating things or experiencing things here with us on the network. You should join us on Discord if you want to come hang out. And yeah, so we're always looking and welcoming of new folks who want to, be a part of things. Come hang out with us. We try our best to make a nice, positive space here on Discord, on our Discord, and yeah. So yeah, I think we should adjust it as, instead of a thank you to the Nerdsmith Network, it's a thank you to everyone in the Nerdsmith Network. Because
there we go.
Y'all are part of it too.
Yeah. So please do. And thank you once again, everyone, for being so amazing and being here with us, spending the time, talking about some crazy stuff for this lunch hour.
Follow me on TikTok.
Power Hour. Follow Angela on TikTok. Follow
Darling
Silky Dreams.
Gypsum. Same as Twitter.
Follow Silky Dreams on TikTok. I hope that's their TikTok name. And
T-Girl.
Follow T-Girl on TikTok. Paddywhack. TikTok Paddywhack. And don't follow me because I'm not on there yet. And you can go to twitter.com/devious_Muppet. That's how you find me. And I'll let Angela do Angela.
Thank you. So as Logan so beautifully put, we are Nerdsmith. This is the Power Hour. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have a beautiful rest of your week, a rest of your day, a rest of your lunch.
Rest of your life.
Please.
Wait.
Yes.
I mean, do have a beautiful rest of your life.
What was the line? It's really it's really nice to ask or tell someone to have a nice day, but to tell them to enjoy their next 24 hours is threatening.
It's somewhat threatening, yeah.
All right, so everyone have a wonderful day. We hope to see you here next week, same time, same place, and please do us a favor and be good to each other. Goodbye.